OK, the FA are cracking down on player and supporter behaviour. Here are their rules on changes on team conduct. Robbo and Shaka are still with us. I'm going to come to you first, though, Craig, because this is something I feel that we've been talking more and more about last season, this behaviour and unacceptable behaviour on the pitch. So are you happy to see these measures being put in place?
I'm happy to see the ball starting to roll. I think, particularly from a manager's perspective, we're seeing more harassing of the fourth officials than ever. It's happening too much. We saw, for those that remember, the end of last year, the berating of Anthony Taylor from a babyish Jose Mourinho, whose side were horrendous, who tried to throw it all back to the referee. That filtered through to the moronic element of the Roma fans, and Anthony Taylor's family had to deal with that at the airport, and we saw the scenes. It was ugly. It was ugly. There was punches being thrown from people around that referee over remarks being made by players, but more so managers. And so I think something has to be done. Certainly from both sides, the player's perspective and the management perspective. From the player angle on it, it kind of gets more annoying whether you agree with VAR or not, and whether you agree with the appliance of VAR. The continual surrounding of officials when big decisions have been made is even more infuriating when you're shouting at these players, for God's sake, he's already told you this is going to be looked at, and yet they continue to surround referees and berate them, and then sometimes this last year it became physical. So I'm delighted. I thought that the punishment handed out to Mitrovic I was fine with that. I would have taken more. I thought the punishment handed out to Jurgen Klopp was not enough. But I think this incident we saw at Man United in the Cup was a disgrace. It was a real disgrace. And it just carried on from the manager to Mitrovic. Then we saw the physical approach where the referee had to back off. He's already laid his hands on him on more than one occasion. It's just, look, we all get frustrated as players. We've all berated referees. But this is beyond the pale. This has gone too far. And the FA are absolutely right. And let's see, when this season starts, if it has any effect. And let's see if it doesn't have an effect, whether the FA clamp down on it and hammer down on it and punish people. Because if you start punishing people, you start punishing managers, you start suspending players, it will stop. Because when a manager goes up to a player and says, listen, I don't need you suspended for 3 games. I need you available. So you have to use your head on the field. Don't get suspended for stupid offences. If you don't do anything about it, OK, they'll keep doing it. If you start punishing players and managers, we'll see it hopefully stopping in the game.
Do you agree with Craig, Robbo, and are you happy to see this new framework being put in place?
Absolutely. The behaviour of players and coaching staff and the coaching staff behind the manager has been absolutely disgraceful for a long, long time now. The FA have tried to do it before and failed miserably. When academies started, there was meant to be more coaching from the coaches and less moaning at referees, and the players were meant to be more disciplined. That lasted about 1 year, and all the coaches would then turn to moaning at referees again. When I was a coach, I loved coaching during the week. On match days, all I could see the opposition's bench doing was having a go at the fourth official, the assistant referee and the referee. And the big managers quite often try to run the game by running the referee. It should stop. It's been disgraceful for too long now, and it comes down to managers. If the manager starts doing it, how can he then tell the players to be disciplined? How can he tell the players not to argue with the referee? It comes down to the managers. They're the people that have to sort it out.
When it comes to the implementation, though, as you alluded to just a bit earlier, do you think that we will see them actually go through with it, and we will see these punishments now that they've said these guidelines out loud? Well,
they're hollow guidelines if they don't. And you know, Stewart and I have both said it. It's getting out of hand, and when things have gotten out of hand within the game itself, laws have changed. As the game has evolved, and I know we're talking about IFAB, and now we're talking about the FA here, but as the game has evolved, laws have changed to protect the players from serious injury. Now, we still see it, but we see it less. So why should laws not change to protect the referees? Because without the referees, we don't have a game. And, you know, it needs to stop. I'm going to be so interested to watch the reaction of players and officials this year, and particularly the guys that are the fourth official that are stood on the side. And they're keeping the time, they're getting the subs on, they're trying to keep their referees in a technical area, they're taking a copy of the bookings, they're doing all that. They're not actually refereeing the game. And yet these guys get an earful for 90-plus minutes all the time. So if it's good enough for the players to amend laws of the game to protect them, why not do it for the referees? So, yeah, I think the FA will hopefully come down hard if there is any players, managers, coaches breaking these guidelines. Do
you feel as though it's something that had to come in right now, Shaka, particularly with some of the scenes that we saw last season?
In all honesty, Kia, I think it's something that's been around for a long time, but the FA have just been reluctant to kind of wield their full power. I thought players surrounding the referees aggressively came to an absolute head back in our day, and for some reason Manchester United comes to mind and the way they did it, but they were by no means the only example. I think every single team in the league at the time was guilty of it, and the FA brought down regulations that was supposed to address that. I just feel they've been a little bit lax in enforcing those rules, in suspending players. Now, as much as I welcome the new wording or the new framework as it's put, that's not going to stop players losing their head, as we saw with Mitrovic. That's just down to an individual completely losing his mind, given the emotions of the circumstance. That has to be dealt with, and dealt with harshly, and continue to do so. I think the amazing thing to this is, and Craig talks about it, is players for some reason surrounding referees around VAR decisions. As though by now you don't know that every single decision, every single goal, every single offside is going to be reviewed by VAR. Nobody needs to surround referees to remind them of that. Surely you know that. But for whatever reason, given maybe the FA's kind of reluctance to be more strong-armed about it, or just players not adapting or recognising that and feeling that they can be a lot more vocal, the FA have now had to come out and say this. So for me, it's less about a reframing of the regulations and more about the FA just kind of reminding everybody that, listen, this is how you're supposed to behave. We're not going to just kind of take a softly approach to it and be more strict in the application and be more strict in the suspensions, because I think that's the only thing that teams and players really respect.
Well, when Robbo talks about it fuels the players when the manager's doing it, he's absolutely right. But I think more worrying, it fuels some of the fan base. When Roma fans see and hear Mourinho, it fuels them. When Liverpool fans that are sitting behind Jurgen Klopp see that, it fuels their anger at somebody who may have not done anything particularly wrong in the game, and that anger probably from a good sector of that particular crowd who are sitting watching all that live because it's right in front of them, you know, maybe think to themselves, well, I think we're just going to hang about at the end of the game and give this guy even more stick, because our manager's saying he's not very good and he's a disgrace and he's this and he's that and the next thing and blah, blah, blah. So it fuels that side of it as well. So I think there is a responsibility. It's an emotive sport, and we understand that. It's never going to be perfect. And none of us are suggesting that we take that out of it. But I think you have to take a little step backwards sometimes and say, right, have I crossed the line? And I think quite a few of those instances that we rolled in there certainly were crossing the line. And I think as long as we can keep the emotion but don't cross over that line, then I'm OK with that. But when it is crossed, I want to see the FA and the governing bodies hammering it down.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.